Hi, this is Stephen from Disown, and we're following up our second episode of Have You Say, talking about the Alienware 17 and the repasting video we did with iunlock. We're joined also with Mobius One and Deeks, fellow workers on Team LiquidHertz. So welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, what's up?
Hello. So we're going to talk. In our last video, we talked about the issues with the paste and the repasting and the pressure on the heatsink and so forth. Now iunlock and his team have talked extensively with Dell, and they're going to brief us on what took place in that conversation. So fire away.
Yeah, hey guys, this is iunlock here. Glad to be back on your channel,
Stephen.
Always have great reviews. Yeah, well, definitely I'll go ahead and I guess just kind of give some of the highlights of the call to give you guys a little bit more in-depth information, and then we'll have Deeks and Mobius One definitely give their piece as well. It's unique because we all have kind of our different perspectives and whatnot, and I think it'll definitely help you guys relate to all of this, very well. So anyway, with the call, it was 2 hours long with them, with the senior management team, and Umar, you guys know him from the social media stuff, and just basic topics that we covered were our impressions of the actual brand of Alienware, along with our impressions with our current system with the 17R4 and or the 15R3. And we also talked about the Wi-Fi card, connector pins on the killer cards, with that whole issue of the pins breaking. We also covered the QHD screen line issue that I'm sure you guys are well aware of for the ones that have that. And of course, the heatsink issue, the unevenness of that, and the thermal issues and the thermal paste, along with BIOS stuff and also the processor and GPU. So that's just an outline of what we talked about. So I guess I could just start off by giving you my little piece, and then I'll go ahead and hand it off to Deeks and Mobius One. Regarding the Wi-Fi connector pins issue, that's definitely a known issue. They're fully aware of that, so keep that in mind. The QHD screen lines, I'll actually let Deeks talk about the screen stuff. Deeks is kind of like the screen guru guy. The heatsink issue and the thermal paste and the unevenness, I guess I'll talk about that there. So Stephen, we had talked about this in our first video where I had pointed out the issue that was causing the heatsink plate to be uneven, which was the thermal pad being too thick over the FETs, or the chokes, if you want to call them, that is right above the CPU. So basically, it was preventing the heatsink from properly being flush with the CPU die. They are aware of that and have pretty much answered to addressing this by switching out this thermal pad here. So this is where the location was of those FETs, right? And before they were using a 0.5 millimeter thermal pad right there, and it was basically causing it from sitting flush. So they changed it out with this white stuff, which is basically, it's not really a thermal pad. It's more of it looks like a thermal tape, because at this thinness of approximately 0.1 millimeters, if not thinner, as these FETs aren't really too important to keep cool versus the actual VRMs. But anyway, there's an image of the new thermal pad, so that's pretty cool that they did something about that to address the issue. So far, the unit's being shipped out after December 6th or so, whatever the date is. We don't know exactly when it is, but the newer batches all come with this, which is great. Also, it's coming with actual thermal paste on the CPU die. It's not a stamp anymore. So they've addressed that. The temps stock out of the box have been improved greatly. The unevenness of the core differential has decreased, so it's a lot better in that regard.
How are they applying the thermal paste now? But it's not in a manufacturing process. I imagine they've got a stamp banging it down. Have they got people now actually applying it physically?
That's a great question. Unless I would assume that they are, unless they somehow magically, made a machine to do that. But I don't think that there's I don't know. I could be wrong, but Yeah. Anyway, but it's real paste. It's a little glittery. Kind of looks like Arctic Silver 5 a little bit. But anyway, it's heck of a lot better than what they're using. The stamp before that they're using, a lot better than that. So again, here's a quick shot of that thick thermal paste. See how it's kind of getting really squished even here?
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. And so that's where the issue was. And you and I and our thread, we had an issue, and it's really ironic that they have confirmed this as well on Dell's end. So I think they're watching your video, Steven.
I hope so. Send me samples.
So anyway, yeah, you can also still do the slight bending of the arm trick, which it wouldn't hurt. So you can also still up to doing that. We got confirmation on our end that it is not Dell deliberately trying to lock us out of any power limits and stuff like that. Basically, they're just working with what they're given. Okay, we'll just kind of keep it at that. And but 102 is good, and I've along with everybody, the whole team with the LiquidHertz, we've been testing BIOS 108, and it is actually doing okay. With a little bit of tweaks. So
I found it quite stable when overclocking in the BIOS 108, and didn't crash at all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's because they changed the tables a little bit in 108 to fix 106. So 106 was a borked BIOS. That's where the issue was. They had issues in the IP tables there. But with 108, I agree. It does seem like it does allow the stock BIOS settings to stick a lot better. So if you set your power limits in BIOS and you reboot, very likely your power limits of PL1 and PL2 will be, it'll show up like you set it without having to open up XTU to reset that. That's what I've noticed so far. But anyway, we'll get back to this if we need to, but let me go ahead and hand it over to D. If you guys want to talk about, if you also want to talk about the call and definitely the screen issue and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to say about the screen issue other than we didn't get the answers we wanted, but we did get sort of a little bit of confirmation. They told us that the lines in the screen were a watermark from the company that develops the screen. And we're not sure how to interpret that. But either way, they did confirm with us that they were working with the manufacturer of the panel to try to see if they can actually resolve it, as they obviously have seen that the panel has this feature or attribute, characteristic, whatever you want to call it.
Now, I've got a QHD screen model here, and I don't see it. Is it in a certain lighting that you see it? Or is it?
No, you can see it mostly easily on solid colors. I guess it depends on how sensitive you are to it. Some people see it and they just don't care. Some people don't see it. Some people it drives them nuts.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Can see that, yeah.
But I mean, at first for me, like it drove me nuts. But then once I started messing around with it, it kind of like after a few weeks, it didn't bother me as much because the performance of like the panel, the refresh rate, and like the response time and all that stuff was overshadowing the character defects, I guess you can call it.
Sure.
But either way, they took notice because so many people have been complaining on Twitter and Facebook and all over the place, and they said they're going to try to do something about it. And from what they seem confident that they were going to come to some kind of resolution, which should end up being replacement panels of the same panel. I guess I don't know if they're going to if they're going to just hound them until they do something about it, and then just future panels will eventually, be fixed. They sort of sounded like it would be sometime soon, but I can only imagine something like that would actually probably take a while. I mean, I can't imagine something can just get remanufactured really quickly. We'll see, but at least they're on top of it. At least they're acknowledging that like it's not something people are happy about. But in the meantime, I think it's actually the least of our worries. Like once the thermal thing started happening and the power limits popped up.
Well, certainly, I hope they do change it. I mean, I didn't notice the banding, but I've measured it using Spider 5 Pro, and it wasn't very color accurate compared to the MSI T73, for instance. It was very cold. I calibrated it, and it would look a bit better, but I think it wouldn't be that good for photographs work.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to get much better because it being TN. I mean, it might be. I don't know. I guess you're right. I mean,
the MSI
the panel I have,
it's a TN too, but
yeah.
I like to add to that. The factory calibration is also very poor. The colors, it's not more the colors. Is when you look at a very cool screen, it adds fatigue to your eyes, and we don't want that.
Yes.
So I believe mine this particular one that I have sitting on my desk right now, the Kelvin was, I believe, 7,200 ish before it was calibrated, and that was very surprising to me because I've handled the 15 with the full HD and then the 15 with the 4K. It wasn't as close to 6,500 as I would like, but they're a lot better than what the TN comes with. I think that should be one of the issues that Dell should look at, is that the color calibration from the factory is very poor.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Also, don't use this screen for anything color sensitive. I think maybe for games it might be okay, but even this screen, it doesn't fully cover the sRGB color space, which is concerning as how expensive this display might be.
It is, exactly. It's a lot
I'm
of
not
money.
going to comment on this versus the MSI because I know the MSI uses an entirely different panel. Chime, it's still at the end. It's 120 hertz G-Sync, but it's not QHD. It's a full HD, and it's different from this one. If you can give us a comment on your GT73, that will give us some comparison.
I mean, I don't have the figures. I mean, I've got actually on my video actually. I put them on my video review, but they were certainly quite high, weren't they? The sRGB and the Adobe RGB, they were fairly high numbers, and certainly the Alienware one are less across the board. So, but as you say, it's a QHD panel, which is nice. It makes it nice and sharp. I think it's great for gaming.
It is actually probably the best screen that came to market this year for a gaming laptop, purely a gaming laptop.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, I think that QHD was made specifically for gaming and nothing else, obviously.
Yeah. The 4K display is a sharp display. I believe it's either AUO or Sharp. I don't know if they use two different manufacturers and they combine them to fulfill the orders. But I had a 17 with 4K came in. Honest to say, that was probably the best 17-inch display that I have seen in a laptop to date.
Great.
Because it had 99% sRGB and Adobe RGB color space. Sorry, not color space, color coverage. And then around, I believe, 89 or above DCI-P3, which is the cinema movie standard. Don't quote me on that. I'm not really sure. But the color accuracy, the color gamut coverage that you get on the 4K sharp screen is absolutely the best that you can get on a laptop right now.
Right, so it might be worthwhile, if you're spending this type of money, investing in the 4K rather than the QHD, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if for those who are connecting their external monitors to game anyway. If you're not really using the laptop screen, 4K screen is fantastic.
So going back to the temperatures with the work they'll have done, what temperatures are you seeing now with the new repasting?
Yeah, well, I mean, on the 6820 HKs, they have been just fantastic. Here, I have pulled up, this is MBR here, and I have pulled up a screenshot. Here, by the way, is the Alienware 15R3, which has smaller fans than the 17, mind you. This is for 1 hour, and if you look here, I have the max current and average temperature. So
wow,
this is after the fix. This isn't out of the box, guys. This is after, the repaste, a repad, and the fix, meaning doing a custom mod to the heatsink and doing pressure paper testing and all that stuff to make sure it's flush. And yes, the newer units coming with that thinner thermal pad over the FETs does help tremendously. But if you look here, it's darn near even. We're talking 2 degrees of thermal core differential. So can it run well? Can it? Do these have a fantastic cooling system? In my opinion, one of the best in the industry. This smokes anything I've seen. And so this is the 15R3, and this is 1 hour OCCT at 4.0 overclocked. And you can see here once again, max temps here, current temps at that time was all 53, which is pretty cool.
I was going to say, do you know what people could expect out of the box with the new process that Dell are doing?
Yes. Also have ran OCCT on that. Now, mind you, guys, OCCT is a very, very thorough, realistic, powerful CPU benchmark. It's not like Pure Mark or nothing where it's going to go over and beyond, some craziness. This is actual, like, combining real world to real, pushing the CPU, pedal to the metal type of deal. And with the stock paste, the core differentials are not as big as they were. I believe I was pushing in the 80s, mid 80s to upper 80 on the hottest core on stock straight out of the box on OCCT. So if you're gaming, that's going to be probably like in the 70s. And Mob, I know you, Mobius One, you have seen some numbers with that as well, right? And and also Deeks, with your 1080 unit, what are some of the numbers you guys were seeing straight out of the box?
I ran Battlefield 1 on the Alienware 17 with a 1080. I believe the CPU was clocked at 3.8. I didn't go too far because I haven't repasted this one, and I want to play somewhat safe with it. On OCCT, the maximum power draw is around 88 watts. And I have my image pulled up here. It's 88 watts with the cores averaging about 82 degrees on OCCT. But the coldest core is 80 degrees, averaging out within a 1 hour run OCCT. But if you run Battlefield 1, it's what the laptop was intended to do. It's like gaming and whatnot. The maximum power draw is only around 65 watts, and it really shows that OCCT it's a good stress program, but don't pin your temperature so much on OCCT because, as we know, it is a synthetic benchmark, and your temperatures also might take it with a grain of salt. It might be higher if you're actually loading both the CPU and GPU at the same time as in Battlefield 1. So you can either expect somewhat lower or the same or just slightly higher actual gaming use.
Yeah, so, I mean, my unit, which I'll post a review shortly on Battlefield 1, stock at default to resolution 95, and at 3440 by 1440, went up to 90.
Wow.
1080p, it was 88, so that's not so bad. But yeah, it depends on the game too. I believe we have had a lot of benchmarks.
Yeah, on Battlefield 1 is that I saw that if you lock the FPS, it won't drive the CPU as hard as if you have it unlocked. I believe the max hard limit on the engine is 200 FPS.
Yeah.
You can set it to 120 or 120. No, for a G-Sync panel, you would set it to 119, just 1 FPS below the maximum refresh rate of the screen.
No, it's good to see that the temperatures will be coming down, because I think that's been the main problem, hasn't it? Perhaps some of this thermal throttling inhibiting performance.
Yeah, definitely has been. But we got to fix now. And Dell's listened to the issue, and they acted on it very quickly. So now it's going to be very interesting to see what people start posting with their stock out of the box temps with the fixed units.
Yes, I think everybody post that information. That'd be good.
Yeah. Yeah, but the information that we show from Team LiquidHertz is we're showing and showcasing what these systems can do once you do a little work under the hood. This is absolutely like bringing out the full potential of the system. So, I mean, when you're going from like 50s to 60s to 80s and 90s, that's still a substantial difference, Yeah, and so, as I mentioned in the last video, I had to ask a question. So, does this mean that a repaste is still necessary? Well, it depends on who you're asking that question to, right? For those who are just doing minor stuff or whatever, they'll probably be fine with the stock stuff now that it's a real paste for one, and also with the heatsink fix straight from the factory. But if upper 80s is okay to you, then you know what? I guess it's okay to you, and if you're happy with it, fine. But gosh, you guys, just doing a repaste, you can see what it can do. Right here.
Oh yeah.
It'll be on the upper 50 and 60. So
it's like dreamland.
It's
now you mentioned before about the cooling system being very good in the laptop, as you demonstrated here. I mean, they're exceptional. Yes. What is different about the cooling system in the Alienwares versus the competition?
Well, that's a great question, and I have actually asked engineer this question. Actually, a buddy of mine is in. He works for a certain company, and he kind of does this hardware type of stuff too in design. When you're designing a laptop, there's so much more that goes into it than what we think is obvious. You know, like I used to think, oh my gosh, you know, why didn't they just put that there, or why didn't they do this, or man, they could have just made this a little bigger or whatever. But my friend was like, oh, you have no idea, bro. He said, you have no idea what goes into this. There's so many other factors with the design and engineering that goes into this. And I think that with Dell being a company as big as they are, they have the resources and the funds to be able to put money into this type of development. And we know that this is one of the best systems built in its class, hands down. Yeah. The build quality, the structure. And so if you look at the thinness of, flip it over and just look at all the placement and all that stuff, you can bet on them factoring in these other variables that we often don't think about.
Now, one of my subscribers mentioned that it even draws air in through the keyboard. Is that correct?
If you put your hand over the left vent and cover that up, and you take like a little piece of like a tissue paper or something like that and put it over the keyboard, you will notice a slight draw, but I think that could be said for any gaming laptop computer in one way or another. But there is a very solid piece of metal there. I know the R3 drew in more air. The 17R3 previous drew in more air from the keyboard than this one did. It's not that that's what it's relying on, but going back to the whole design and engineering and what it really takes to build something like this, I think they nailed that, and that's what makes this cooling system such a, in my opinion, the best in the industry.
Yeah, did you have a slide showing the cooling system? I think you probably have somewhere.
Here's the current R4, and this is a 1070 model.
Okay, yeah. So
basically,
that's right.
Yeah, yes, you have shared heat sinks. Yes, you have all of this, and in my opinion, MSI hands down has the best cooling system engineering and technology. I think they put a lot more emphasis in it, and that's one thing I do respect about MSI. And I believe that with MSIs, they can get just as good as temperatures with a little bit of work under the hood with Liquid Magic and some other stuff. So I'm really excited about that, and we'll be tapping into the MSI category here this coming year. So that's going to be real great.
Not really going to add anything to that, but I would say something I thought that was interesting that Dell comment on is that they were using Furmark and Prime 95 to test their temperatures, which I thought was pretty cool because everybody's always like, hey, stay away from Furmark, it kills video cards or whatever. But that's what they're using in their labs to test these changes.
Oh, that's good to know. That's what I use. But did they crank the temperature up to 26 degrees Celsius too? That's what I want to know. So anyway, guys, I'd like to thank you very much for your time on that. Please feel free to contact them if you want any pasting, and I think Team LiquidHertz will have their own YouTube channel up shortly. Be able to see all their videos and tutorials and all the work they're doing. Excellent work, and I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Thanks, Deeks. Thanks, Mobius1. Thanks, iUnlock.